Okay. So,
Mm.
do you speak any Welsh?
Yes. So what's kind of interesting is a lot of people who have a very strong, typical Welsh accent come from the valleys of Wales, and often they actually don't speak Welsh. And Welsh, if to explain it a little more, a lot of people think Welsh is similar to English. It isn't. It's a Celtic language, a very ancient literary Celtic language that's distantly related to Irish, which is spoken in Ireland, another Celtic language, and Gaelic, which is spoken in Scotland.
Hello, 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 and welcome everybody to another native British English conversation between myself, Lewis. I hope you know this by now, but if you don't, I'm Lewis. I'm from a city called Leeds in the north of England, but now I live in Brussels, and today it's grey, cloudy, gloomy, and a little bit sad, but it is what it is. So let's focus on our guest today, who we can see. She's beaming, she's grinning, she's smiling and waving. So, Katie, welcome.
Hi, Lewis. Nice to meet you in person. We've seen each other on Instagram many times, I think, over the years. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. And let me get to know you a little bit more, whilst our viewers are also getting to know you a little bit more. So, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Introduce yourself.
So I'm originally from West Wales in the United Kingdom, which is next to England, between England and the Irish Sea. I'm from a rural community out in West Wales. I went to university in Scotland, the University of Edinburgh, to study French and linguistics. And I specialized in English phonology and phonetics and cognitive phonetics, especially speech perception, while I was there. And I spent a year studying in France, doing some wild and wonderful courses in linguistics out there, which was amazing in the French Alps. So there was a lot of snow when I lived there, but now I live in Montreal, Canada. My husband is Canadian. I'm Canadian too, but of course, dual nationality, British and Canadian. And now we're buried under about 2-3 feet of snow, which is exciting and somewhat
That was
inconvenient.
me complaining at like 5, 10 degrees when it's a little bit cloudy, but the sun's kind of trying to break out through the
Oh,
clouds. But no, it sounds like the weather here is a little bit better than over there.
well, we have most of the time we have clear, sunny skies, which is, I really appreciate that. And our days are not particularly short because we're actually on the same latitude as Milan in Italy. So it's not very far north. It's just that we don't have the Gulf Stream that warms things up in Europe. So that's why it's so cold and snowy here, which is, yeah, something to get used to, certainly.
Perfect. Well, you are a great representation of the United Kingdom. If you're Welsh, you went to uni in Scotland. I believe, if I'm not wrong, you lived in London for a while in the past too.
That's right. Yeah. For about 2.5 years, I was living and working in London. I taught English pronunciation in the city, the financial centre of London. And yeah, and I did enjoy that time, but London is too busy for a country mouse like me. It's rather chaotic, and so a slightly less populated city suits me better generally.
Country mouse. Nice.
Yes,
If
yeah.
you're a country bumpkin, a country person, you could say you are a country mouse. And it's interesting because sometimes when people will ask me, like, Lewis, where shall I visit in the United Kingdom? I'm usually like, I don't really know. Of course, you kind of have to go to London. York is a really nice old city near me as well in Yorkshire. Edinburgh is absolutely stunning. People say Bristol is beautiful, but personally, I've never
Mm.
been. But usually, if people want like the country feel, I'll recommend Wales or Scotland because
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot less kind of population and buildings, and you can actually see, I don't know, kind of what the United Kingdom used to be like before everything became so intense with buildings and roads and infrastructure.
Exactly. I think the Cotswolds is a really nice place to go to if you want to sort of see how England is in storybooks. If you go to a place called Laycock or Castle Combe, it's kind of like it's kind of near Bristol, Gloucestershire, that kind of area. I think that's probably, if you like architecture, that's probably the best place to go to see traditional English honey stone and that kind of thing, or Bath maybe. But if you want, the rugged coastline, if you want to see beautiful landscapes, sort of little coastal coves and things like that, Devon, Cornwall, and Pembrokeshire in West Wales, those are the places to head to, I would say.
Okay, so do you speak any Welsh?
Yes. So what's kind of interesting is a lot of people who have a very strong, typical Welsh accent come from the valleys of Wales, and often they actually don't speak Welsh. And Welsh, if to explain it a little more, a lot of people think Welsh is similar to English. It isn't. It's a Celtic language, a very ancient literary Celtic language that's distantly related to Irish, which is spoken in Ireland, another Celtic language, and Gaelic, which is spoken in Scotland. But they split about 3,000 years ago. So Welsh is more close to Breton, which is spoken in Brittany and northwest France. So in my region, people do speak Welsh generally, even though we have a more English sounding accent when we speak English. And it's generally the west and north of Wales that is Welsh speaking. It is not a dead language. It's very much alive. It's been revived by policy. So it's always been there, but there's been a sort of standardization of the language through policy. The government has tried to sort of standardize it to keep people speaking it. Have a lot of opinions on how it's being taught, but we won't get into that now. But yes, my grandparents were first language Welsh speakers, and I learned it in school. But obviously now I've been in Montreal for nearly a decade. I'm not really using it anymore, which is a great shame. But yeah, I still understand when people are saying cheeky things about me.
And it's always interesting. Like if, for example, in the United Kingdom, a lot of the time, you know that most other people don't speak any other languages. So, for example, with my girlfriend, we both speak Spanish. Sometimes if we want a private conversation to speak about other people, we'll do it in Spanish. There are many Spanish speakers in the United Kingdom that they're usually concentrated in the big cities. So if you go to a small town in Yorkshire and if my girlfriend want a private conversation, we'll do it in Spanish rather than in English, which is nice. And here in Belgium, it's hard to do that because it is kind of multilingual, multicultural place. So there are a lot of Spanish-speaking people. So we've got no private language. We need to learn Welsh, I suppose.
Yeah, although you have to be careful because you never know when someone's going to speak your language. There are some sort of Celtic enthusiasts throughout the world that will learn Welsh, which is interesting. I don't really know why, but yeah, it is fun to have a private language. Absolutely. But maybe choose something more minority, sort of like Basque. You should learn Basque and then speak that with your girlfriend.
Probably, no. Yeah. I think it'd be tough, but you never know in the future. I don't want to rule it out. I don't want to say never going to do it. And so you grew up in West Wales and then you went to Edinburgh. So at what point in your childhood did you kind of become interested in linguistics and French? And was it an easy decision to go to uni there to do this degree?
Yeah, so I think I've always been, I know that sounds really cliche, but I've always been born to be a linguist. My cousins were bilingual French English. My mum's brother married a French lady. And so my cousins used to visit me during the summer months, and my aunt before they were born. And they would be speaking French, and my grandparents would be speaking Welsh. And there was a lot of there was a lot of input of other languages in my environment when I was a child. Even when I guess before I was born, I was hearing other languages, the rhythms of other languages. And so I've always had a sort of fascination with different codes, kind of like different ways of saying the same thing. And even though I wasn't technically brought up simultaneously bilingual, meaning hearing two languages from the very start, and getting those brain benefits, I always had this kind of what's called metalinguistic awareness, which means you're aware of how language works. This object has 2 words or 3 words to refer to it. So when I was very small, I have a cousin whose name is Mary, or Marie, depending on how you say it. And my aunt would call her ma chérie. And I thought that the che bit in the middle, ma chérie, I thought the che was like a cutesy word, like a cutesy infix in the name. So one day I asked my aunt, why don't you refer to your son as Will chez Liam? His name is William. I said, why don't you say Will chez Liam? And she was just like, oh my goodness, she's a linguist too. She was like, this child is born to be a linguist, is born to be maybe a morphologist, looking at the little parts of words. But I ended up being a phonologist, a phonetician and phonologist. And French was just, I've always been a Francophile. It's always been a language that's enchanted me. And now my accent in French has changed dramatically because I live in Canada, so I speak Quebec French now. And so I alternate. I code switch, which is where you change your way of speaking depending on your environment. So I can speak European French and Quebec French. Depending on who I'm speaking to, I switch it up. And it was always kind of the same for me in Wales. I would change. Now I speak with kind of almost RP, received pronunciation, because I'm teaching received pronunciation every day, and I have been for a long time. But I will switch back. It's I think there's always been this fascination with how people use language, and sort of it seems like it was born into me. I don't know. So
that's interesting because I do a kind of similar thing, but to a lesser degree with my accent just in English, because you can maybe notice a little bit of Yorkshire, but when I'm speaking
a little
really like this, it seems very, very neutral. And people sometimes ask me, like, Lewis, is this your real accent? Do you normally speak like this? And I'll notice myself when I'm recording certain videos. Like recently, I've started making like how to say in British English, and there'll be certain phrases that I'll say in a really broad Yorkshire accent, and then other phrases where I'll like kind of tell myself, or maybe I won't be aware of it, that I'll say it and pronounce it more like an RP English. Just because of teaching so much, that usually it's easier if you speak the more standard version of English. And that's what I was kind of trained to do when I started teaching English, which I don't know whether I agree with personally. People who have maintained their accent 100% and they like resist this change. And it's like, no, I'm going to speak the way I speak, and that's it. But at least I do kind of like code switch a little bit between like speaking more like the Queen's English and my proper Yorkshire accent. And then usually speak more Yorkshire. It comes from like my throat, and when I'm speaking, I'm like murmuring a lot more. It's like, all right, guys, how we doing? What's going on? Yeah, I'm just off the pub,
Yeah.
do kind of like sometimes without realizing switch my accent from RP received pronunciation to proper Yorkshire.
Yeah. How does it make you feel when you switch? Does it surprise you ever, or how do you feel?
I mean, the annoying thing is that now when I go back home and I'm with my friends and family, or some people might be
Mm.
like, guys, your voice has changed. Or like, you sound weird. So then you
Yeah.
don't belong with certain people, and then you
Yeah.
don't belong with other people at the same time because you're never going to speak the Queen's English. So
Yeah.
I find it
Yeah.
all intriguing and fascinating, but at the same time, it's a little bit unsettling because, like,
Yeah.
what happened to my original accent?
Yeah. Where did it go? Somewhere in the English Channel, maybe. It sort of
The mystery.
disappeared on the way over to the continent.
Oh, no, for
Possibly.
sure. And speaking about your French, because I've been studying French for the last couple of years, I can get by in
Mm.
French, but I've been lacking motivation more recently because I don't really have that many opportunities to practice it. But I do
Mm.
kind of notice the difference between uh, the Canadian French and European French. Uh,
Yeah.
for you, was it a shock when you moved to Canada? Like hearing people speaking in a different accent when speaking French?
Mm, not really. I think I was a little bit worried at first that I wouldn't understand people. And I first came to Canada actually a long time ago, 13 years ago, to sort of what we call in Britain, we say do a recce. It's like a recreational, no, it's a reconnaissance mission. Reconnaissance mission. I did a reconnaissance mission. I came to Canada to see what it would be like because Britain was still reeling from the 2008 economic crash. And I was looking to find a city that would be kind of a sort of like a festival city like Edinburgh and quite international, but that had more economic prosperity and plenty of work and opportunities. And so I came here to do a recce in 2012. And I got chatting to somebody in the airport and I didn't understand them at all. And I was terrified that I wouldn't understand any Canadians speaking French. And it turned out that the man speaking was a ch'ti, which means somebody who comes from northeast France, near Lille. And I was very relieved because, in fact, the actual French Canadians were easier to understand than this man, for me anyway, for this man from Lille. So that was quite funny. I yeah, I worked for a time as a linguist for Amazon, and that required me to have a deep understanding of Quebec French, Amazon, as you say in Britain, a deep understanding of Quebec French, and so now I understand everybody, and I find that my identity has shifted somewhat. I didn't previously have much of a francophone identity, but now I'm quite proud to have a blended identity. And people, when I speak French, they don't ask me where I'm from because I just sound generically complicated, like everybody else here. And I'm very proud of that because it's very frustrating when you live somewhere for a long time and everybody asks you where you're from constantly. You just want to go about your day. A lot of my clients say that to me, and that as a sort of primary reason for taking accent coaching with me because they're really sick of that question. And I find for myself that I often avoid speaking English because it's so obvious that I'm British when I'm speaking English. But when I'm speaking French, I fly under the radar. So people don't notice, that I'm necessarily foreign, which is fun. It's nice to have that ability to be unrecognized.
That sounds cool. And given that you are a linguist and you're into different accents, like, are you able to put on different accents in English so you can switch
Yeah.
from like a standard American to Irish to Australian? Is this something that you can do?
Yes, if I find sometimes I'm very picky, so I like to study them. If if I study them, then yes. If I don't study them, it's kind of a crude imitation. And I can hear in my, because I'm so tuned into the phonology aspect of language, I can hear that it's not quite right. And then I get frustrated. So I don't tend to do that as a party trick anymore, because I know that it's not perfect unless I've studied it. But since I know how to study the various aspects of English phonology, I can imitate different English accents, certainly. But when it comes to a particular region, I find that people from that region are sort of, I don't know, kind of tuned in on another level. My dad can tell the difference between somebody from the next village over or the next village over from that in the UK. And in Canada, that's just not, it doesn't work like that. Nobody can do that in North America, I find. It just isn't. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there are some regions, but the diversity of accent is not nearly as rich, I find. And then I feel like it's all these subtle qualities of how you speak. It's not academic then at that point. I find it's sort of, you're tuning into something about somebody's way of speaking. And it's the same in Britain. We have a lot of stereotypes about how the accent matches up to the character. And it's easy to do a kind of, it's easy to fall into a pastiche, like a crude imitation, or even making fun, I find. And you have to be careful doing that sometimes. You can offend people really easily.
No, for sure. Like, I've got one example of this, that, like, I think it was during the pandemic, maybe like 2021. I went to watch The Lion King in Madrid in Spanish, and my girlfriend is from the south, from Andalusia, and I lived there as well. And in Spain, usually the generic kind of stereotype of people speaking with an Andalusian accent is that people are supposedly very funny, and people are also supposedly a little bit lazier as well. So, I mean, being funny is a little bit kind of positive, but the other one is definitely negative.
Yeah.
People from that region will get angry and get pissed off when they meet someone else from another part of Spain. It's like, oh, you're from Seville. Go on, tell me a joke. It's like, oh, have a little bit of
That's funny. Yeah.
with The Lion King, there was like, I think it was, I don't know if it was Timon or Pumbaa. Of the two main characters, one of them is like the happy-go-lucky, funny one, and he had an Andalusian accent. And that's no problem with that. But then we were looking at the cast, and it was like, wait, this guy was born in Madrid, and he's just putting on the accent to sound funnier.
That's
I know
terrible.
it happens all over the place for different accents, but it's a little bit, it's a dangerous thing to get into if you're associating different places with their accent and then generalizing these people as a result. And like the UK, it happens quite a lot as well. On like the BBC with like journalists, I think more recently, they've started to show a wider array and range of accents. So it's not just the Queen's English as like the newsreaders, but like people say that people from, I don't know, Liverpool are, again, quite happy and funny, but also maybe not the most trustworthy. And then other people from like Birmingham, perhaps, people always say that a Brummie accent is the ugliest accent, according to random polls.
So sad.
It's sad that there are these kind of stereotypes, and I think we are changing as a society now, and we have fewer and fewer of these kind of generalizations and stereotypes.
Yeah.
It is something to be aware of when like putting on different accents, because you might put your foot in it and make a mistake, and people might not react well if you try to impersonate the accent. So
exactly, and it feels quite sort of, the way that you speak is very, it can be quite emotional for people, because the voice is, a lot is communicated in our voice, our confidence level, our level of comfort, our all of those things are sort of laid bare in how we speak. And sometimes if whenever you're playing, I think with accent and voice, you have to be very sensitive to the fact that people, when somebody sings, we were talking earlier before the recording about karaoke. It's you want people to cheer for you. You want people to, to be encouraging when you're using your voice, because it is a vulnerable thing.
For sure. Now, let's go back in time a little bit to Edinburgh. How would you sum up your experience at university in Edinburgh?
Oh, it was magical. It really was. It's like a storybook place. I see it as a sort of patchwork quilt of buildings. There are many layers to the city, and it's very spooky. I like to say I can be a little woo-woo sometimes, a little, and I like the ghostiness of Edinburgh. There's a lot of sort of, I feel it's very thick with history and kind of different layers of sort of mystical spookiness that I really enjoy. It's very colorful and a sort of a dark, gloomy place, but with all this kind of vibrancy in it. Of course, it's a festival city, and you feel that as soon as you arrive. And I remember going to the open day with my mum and just being completely in love with it. I had also applied to Oxford. I didn't get into Oxford, which I think was a blessing in disguise, because Edinburgh is very much my kind of place, more than Oxford would have been, I think. And it was the best for linguistics. I knew that the linguistics department there was the top 3 in the world, actually, for my subject. And so it was very competitive to get into Edinburgh. So when I visited there, I was like, oh, I kind of hope I don't get into Oxford, almost, because I love this place and the university was so ancient. And just, it was a dream. It really was. The people there were very down to earth. The other students were really up for trying things like Cayley dancing and sort of random hobbies and activities that, probably I wouldn't have been able to access before or anywhere else. And it was beautiful. The university is ancient, with some really gorgeous Gothic buildings spread throughout the city centre. And the professors in the linguistics department were just extraordinary. The depth of study that we did was just breathtaking. Everything about it. I was so grateful to have that opportunity, and I had the time of my life.
You mentioned that it's a festival city. It's called Fringe Festival, is what you mean?
Yeah, so there is the Edinburgh Festival, which is a sort of highbrow, sort of like more classical festival, with theatre and music, classical music, things like that. And then around that, it's in August, around that sort of central festival, some comedy shows started popping up, and sort of other arts shows, and then the Fringe, that was called the Fringe, and it grew and grew to the point where now the Fringe Festival is kind of the main attraction. Well, I think it depends. For sort of older people, maybe the original festival, they can still be a little snobbish about it. The original festival is very much still alive, but the bulk of people who go there go for the comedy and the other whimsical activities in August. But residents of the city tend to get a bit frustrated because it's very busy that time of year. Yeah, I loved it though. The festival vibe continues, I feel, throughout the year, with a huge variety of entertainment in the city. And that kind of paired with the museums and the cultural aspects of the city, there's always something fascinating to dive into intellectually, which I loved.
I went to Edinburgh like recently, like a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, and I had a great time. There are lots of things to do, and it's a really like breathtaking city. It's really beautiful, a little bit spooky. You've got the castle, you've got lots of lovely countryside around, great buildings wherever you look, amazing pubs as well, personally. And I
Yes. Oh,
also
yeah.
like 5 or 6 years ago with my friends, and it coincided with Fringe Fest.
Ah,
We went to a
yes.
couple of like stand-up comedy shows, which was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend going to Edinburgh to anyone who is listening to this conversation, just because it is that feel of like what you expected kind of England to be like. And I say England, I mean the United Kingdom in general, where you see
Yeah.
these old-fashioned buildings, you have these beautiful pubs, it's cold, but kind of like warm and cozy and welcoming at the same time. So yeah, I would
Yeah.
vouch for Edinburgh to anyone and book your tickets, people. Check it out.
Yeah, exactly. And be careful not to call it England, remember?
Yeah, no. I
We hate that. Celtic
told my
people.
friend that classic thing. I was like, oh, I didn't.
It's so funny. I can't do it. Every time somebody, even now, asks me, like an Uber driver or something, oh, are you English?
England, right?
I'm
London,
like,
right?
no, not at all. I'm Welsh, and they're sort of all British. I don't mind British, but even now, even if I'm abroad, if someone sort of says, oh, England, right? I'm like, not quite. Next to it.
English people are guilty for doing this a lot as well. Where it's like, oh, Wales is just England, right? But of course, it's not, guys. It's not. My bad. Now, however, you do teach English pronunciation, so that's a nice
That's
little
right.
segue.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you do on a normal week. Like, what kind of classes do you prepare? You mentioned as well earlier before we started recording that you have different courses. Tell us
Yeah.
about your job.
Yeah, of course. So I founded British Accent Academy, which is my pronunciation school, in 2015, after having worked as an English pronunciation teacher prior to that in London. And it started out with accent coaching, so live accent coaching over video call, like we're doing now. From the very start, I was doing that in 2015. And essentially, my clientele is made up of people who have a lack of confidence in their ability to articulate in English. So the speech sounds and speech patterns of English. So it might be that they speak English very fluently, but have a lack of confidence or some embarrassment about how the sounds come out. Quite often people will use the speech sounds of their native language to speak their second or third language. And often the intonation, the pacing, the pitch usage, the use of volume is also transferred from the native language into English. And so many of my clients have the goal of being able to speak clearly in English, being able to make themselves understood very clearly. So still with an accent, still with the flavor of their native language, but instead of having to repeat themselves many times because of the strong accent that they feel is holding them back, people will understand what they say the first time they speak. So that's the goal for many of my clients. Other clients of mine, again through video call, already have a very strong grasp of the phonology of English, meaning the speech sounds and speech patterns and intonation patterns that make up English, British English. But they may be feeling like, oh, if I made a couple of little tweaks, I could pass as a native speaker. Some people are at that level where they actually they have a natural ability for English phonology, and they're very interested in the topic. And so they come to me saying, hey, you know, I'm a Chinese speaker. I'm very musical, perhaps, or I have a really good ear. I'm almost there. There was one guy who wanted to sound like Tom Hiddleston. Right. He had a similar pitch of voice, and he wasn't an actor or anything. He just liked the actor Tom Hiddleston. And he said, I really want to sound like this guy, this actor, but there's something about my speech, and I don't know what it is, that is holding me back. And it was a very specific aspect of the way that he was using intonation, and the way that he was using, we call it prosody, the rhythm of the language. It's many different things, but the rhythm particularly was, in his case, what was bothering him. And the middle of the phrase, he was spreading out his syllables too evenly in the middle of the phrase. So the pattern that we have in received pronunciation or in many English accents is to have a stress, a big, loud, long sound at the beginning, near the beginning of the phrase, and a really big, long, loud sound at the end of the phrase. And in the middle, there's often sort of a series of faster syllables. So it's like da, 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 like that, and various combinations. And the fast sequence in the middle was what he was struggling with. A lot of Chinese speakers struggle with that. So it's things like that. It's sort of, it can range from nobody understands me, please help, to, oh, I'm happy with my accent, but I'd like to, I don't know, deliver presentations more confidently. There's something that's a bit off. Can you listen and see? So that's the coaching side. And then in 2020, very fortunately, I'd prepared a series of video courses on English pronunciation that I wrote myself based on the struggles that clients have been coming to me with for many years. So I understand, you know, the various challenges of Spanish speakers, Russian speakers, Chinese speakers, Hindi speakers, sometimes also, when trying to make themselves, you know, easily understood in a British environment. And often that environment is quite xenophobic or quite racist, and trying to navigate that, you know, emotionally and practically is really, it's heartbreaking sometimes. So I prepared these video courses that I was really proud of, and I was just editing them in sort of February 2020, getting them ready to launch in kind of the spring of 2020.
Great.
And then surprise, the pandemic began. And I was like, wow, okay, so these are ready, you know. So now there are sort of about 14 hours of video lessons that I've prepared online, and I was just inspired to create. I think sometimes when you make something, the best way to start is just to kind of to want to put something into the world. So I've created animated practice videos where you see the cross section of the face, and you can see each speech sound slowly and fast, or like an international phonetic alphabet chart that changes shape depending on the orientation of your screen, but still linguistically makes sense. Like there's still a categorization, however it's turned, which sounds really nerdy, but there was nothing like that before. So I worked with people, I project managed, and, you know, came up with the design myself to make this thing. And it's hard to explain, but for me, I just wanted to make it. So I made it. Yeah.
It sounds very difficult. Like in general, like making an online course, like it's what a lot of people in this niche of like English language teaching do, because there are many pluses, there are many advantages, because you make something once and then you can sell it multiple times.
Yeah.
And for the consumer point of view, they can buy something once and then they can use it over and over again until they feel confident with it. And it's something that I would like to do in the future. But like there are things that are holding me back, I suppose, which is like it's a lot of work to do in one go. it needs to be a really, really high quality. So like
Mhm.
higher quality than what we post on YouTube or Instagram and stuff like that to warrant actually paying for it. So all
Yeah.
of these things are kind of in the back of my mind when I think about finally making a course in the future. And then like all the editing, putting it on
Yeah.
platform as well.
It's a
It's a lot
lot.
of work. So
Yeah.
in your case, like how did you manage to create it and what were the biggest
Yeah.
challenges?
It was a long time coming. Like it really did take a lot of time, energy, and fear, getting over fear, I guess. I think the biggest challenge for me that was surprising was actually looking into the camera and saying what I wanted to say without being nervous. So to get over that, I ended up printing out a picture of two of my kindest clients. These two Spanish ladies, I printed out their picture with their permission and stuck it under my camera. And at the beginning, when I first started making the courses, I was just talking to them. So for the mini course that I made on the schwa, the weak, the most common vowel in English, sound, I was talking to them. So that helped a lot. Learning how to use all the equipment, learning how to create lighting, learning how to kind of set up was very challenging. And I did sort of a skill exchange at the beginning with some friends. So I would help them with something, and they would help me with something. So that was great. A lot of people are actually very willing and open to share what they know. If especially if you're generous back in some kind of way, then often people are very excited to talk about how they made their, I don't know, whatever, their music video or whatever it might have been. So there was that. And then editing, I taught myself and I watched videos on Udemy and things like that. I collected a lot of information and decided how the flow was going to work for me, what sort of tools would be useful for me. And then I found people, animators, coders, web design people, along the way. You have to be quite scrappy along the way to kind of, I didn't have a auto cue or a teleprompter, so I made one myself. I didn't want to spend $500 on it. I didn't have $500 to spend on a teleprompter, so I made my own, which helped enormously. And then learning how to, speak at the right speed and how to convey the information in a bite-sized way. It was a real challenge. It was a huge labor of love. I did all the editing myself, and I fix things when they're broken, and just honestly, for me the big why was always helping my clients. I have lived the experience of being othered, of being sort of made to feel like I don't belong in the place where I live. Many times I've lived in other countries too. I lived in Germany. I moved to Germany alone right after university. I didn't speak German very well at all, just a bit, really not well enough to function. I didn't know anybody. I knew nobody at all. It's really isolating. And I think if you have spent the time, you've really worked hard and you've tried to integrate yourself, or you've tried to make yourself fit in or belong, and then you're still coming up against barriers, even after you've been speaking the language for 20, 30 years in many cases. I wanted to make something that would be kind of, just a guide to hold people and to be like, okay, here are the tools. This is what you're missing. This is what you didn't learn in school. This is what you've never had the opportunity to learn before, but it's not your fault. It's normal that you would use the speech sounds of your native language to speak your second language or third language. And here you go. Here's the missing piece. And here's how to practice. Here's how to be patient with yourself and just slowly build your knowledge, build your ear, build your speech perception, and feel better about how you speak. So that was the driving principle, and it worked. So it's still working. Yeah,
Tip
I've
of
got
the cap
6,000
to
in
you.
school. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm like, yeah, there's 6,000 people learning from me online. It's amazing. Like, and more, on Instagram, some people can't buy my courses, and that's fine. There are people on my Instagram from Iran and from Russia as well. And they can't currently buy, other countries too, they can't currently buy the courses, and that's okay. They can learn from me on Instagram, and that's beautiful. And like with you, I mean, there are people all over the world learning from you, and I think it's amazing. The internet has given us so much richness.
No, it's a good feeling. It's a rewarding feeling, especially when you work hard for something and then all of that hard work actually pays off in the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get over the technical aspects, and then you make something that you're like, hey, look at that, I made that thing. That's great. That's cool. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Now, before we finish, I've got a quick fire round of little easygoing questions.
Okay.
So, first, what is your favorite food?
Roast dinner.
Interesting. Any meat in particular?
Beef. Lots of Yorkshire puddings. Loads of gravy. Oh, and horseradish sauce, of course.
Interesting. What is the last film or series you watched?
I watched Bridget Jones' Diary yesterday, and it was alarming because I'm older than Bridget was at the beginning. Yeah.
Did it live up to the previous films?
Oh no, I watched the first one. I'm preparing to watch the new one. I've seen it before, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fine, cool. And then, for example, if you've got a Saturday free, no plans at all, what would you like to do to have a perfect Saturday?
I like to hike on Mount Royal in Montreal, which is this sort of urban mountain park. Yeah. And then go for a really large sandwich with my husband. Yeah. Maybe like a jazz jam session. I like to dance. So some jazzy music that I can swing dance to would be perfect.
And then on your phone, if you are addicted to your phone like many, many people, which apps do you use most?
The messaging. I don't know how to say that.
Messenger?
Terrible, isn't it? Messaging apps. And I like to make collages on, apps like Pinterest and stuff as well. Looking at beautiful things and travel pictures, especially when travel is a little bit more challenging these days, I would say. So try to sort of dream up beautiful adventures that I'm going to have.
And speaking about adventures, that's a perfect little link. Imagine you won the lottery, let's say €1 million, £1 million, $1 million, it's all very similar. What would you do with the money?
Well, the sensible choice is, I suppose, buy property. And that's probably in reality what I would do. But in a dream world, if I already had property, I'm in my 30s, I would probably, I don't know, probably take a beautiful adventure, take a beautiful trip. I love coastal places, and there's a place where there are houses on stilts or something, and people free dive underneath these houses on stilts. And there are beautiful stingrays and fish and things, like in Avatar, the water movie.
People.
The water people. I would like to see the water people and swim with the water people, I think. Yeah.
It sounds nice. A nice little dream to have, a little thing on your bucket list at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, on that now, we will call it a day and finish off for today. But thank you very much, Katie, and thank you everybody for watching. If you have any questions for myself or Katie, do not hesitate to ask. And let us know also, given that we spoke quite a lot about Edinburgh, have you ever visited Edinburgh? Or if not, would you like to visit Edinburgh?
And please do... Oh, yeah.
Go on.
I was going to say, please do. I wasn't sure if you'd finished. Please do follow me on Instagram as well. It's at Learn British Accent, in case you are curious about English pronunciation. And British Accent Academy is my website, britishaccentacademy.com.
I mean, I might check it out myself because I'm curious. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Katie. And see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.